we'll have more time for discussion on this issue. Kim, can you hear us?
Yes. Hi, how are you?
Good. How about yourself?
I'm hanging in there. I'm getting old.
We'll talk about that. But sorry, you had to wait in the waiting room. We were finishing up the discussion about family firms.
No problem.
So I'm going to share screen, introduce you, and then we'll move to the next step. Hopefully you can see my screen. It gives me tremendous pleasure to introduce you to a phenomenal researcher today, Dr. Kim Eddleston, who's a professor at Northeastern University. She's renowned for her research in family business, as you saw in the top family business researcher list we were just looking at a few minutes ago. She's one of the top family business researchers in the world. She's an associate editor on the Journal of Business Venturing, editorial boards of many journals. Now, a lot of people in this profession, including senior people, talk about how we need to do more to translate research into practice. Kim Eddleston is one of the few who's taken initiative to actually do that. She created a website, familybusiness.org, which is openly accessible to anyone around the world, where she translates family business research into insights for family businesses and other people who are interested in family businesses. And she served in many leadership roles within the entrepreneurship division of Academy of Management. This is likely a theme you've seen in all our guest speakers so far. They are not only good researchers, they also generously give their time to the community. And Dr. Eddleston got her PhD from the University of Connecticut, and we'll talk about her journey in a few minutes. Usually, this is where my introduction stops. But today is different. And it is different because today is Dr. Kim Eddleston's birthday. And so we want to wish her a happy birthday, and we want to thank her for taking the time to spend her birthday with us.
Aw. Thank you.
Wish happy birthday to
Happy
Dr. Kim.
birthday to you.
Thank you so much. Thank
Long
you
life
so
and
much.
prosperity.
And
Happy
Dr.
birthday, ma'am.
Eddleston reminded me that Dr. Eddleston reminded me that she just turned 29 today. So I hope.
Again, I turned 29 again.
I was going to say the same thing. How young has she gotten?
Perfect. So, Kim, let me start with the first question that we ask all of our guest speakers. How did you get interested in entrepreneurship research and family business research? Is this something you wanted to always do from when you were a little girl?
Probably not. So there's two parts to the story. So I fell in love with research when I was a student at Cornell. I was a student in their hospitality school, and I did a master's thesis, and I was also a research assistant. And I did a program where it was at Cornell in Ithaca, and then part of it was at ESSEC, which is a grande école in France. And I fell in love with research. And I was just going to stay. I was going to stay at Cornell and do my PhD there. And I had a really good advisor, the person I was an RA for. She was like, you can get your PhD here, but chances are you'll only be able to work in a hospitality school, a hotel school. But if you go get your PhD at a business school, you can, you have more opportunities. You can either work at a business school, and you could always come back, if you wanted hotels. And then I was like, oh my God, where am I going to go? And she said, you should pick the school based on whose research really inspired you in the master's thesis. And it was Gary Powell at the University of Connecticut. So I went there. And so that was my first start, but I was more doing stuff on, hospitality industry tends to be very male dominated, particularly going up the ladder. So my thesis was on, women in the hotel industry. And so that's why Gary Powell really inspired me. And he always did research, not only looking at, oh, why are women discriminated against? But he always also had research that looked at where women excelled. And that's what I really liked about his research. And then when I was at UConn, University of Connecticut, I had, and he just passed away, Mike Lubatkin was one of my professors. And he was always either number one or number two in the world in strategy research. It was him and Mike Kitt. Um, and he started doing his seminal work on family business. Because before then, Family Business Review, it was always consultants who did work. So him and Bill Schultz were really some of the first people to do like systematic research, get it in the top management and entrepreneurship journals. But it had a really negative slant. And he and Bill Schultz had never worked in a family business. So it took agency theory, and basically the message of all their work was, if you want the business to survive and thrive, get the family out. And that was not my experience. I grew up in a family surrounded by family businesses. At one time, we had 9. We now have 5. I'm a stakeholder in 3. And I always saw the family as a resource. The family was key, absolutely key to success and survival. And then one of my classmates, Franz Kellermans, also came from a family business in Germany, and that was his perspective. So we got together and started doing work, and Mike Lubatkin was actually supposed to be on our first paper, but after we wrote it, he said, "You guys don't need me." He's like, "You guys can go off. If I'm on this paper," he said, "everyone's going to think it was mine." He's like, "Do it on your own, and I'm here for help." And that's what we did. And to this day, Franz and I have more than, I think it's 40 articles, just him and I together. And we took a very positive approach. How is the family a resource? A stewardship theory approach. It was what family businesses wanted to hear. Um, at the time, we were both like assistant professors. We couldn't get our articles out fast enough. And so it's now we take definitely more complex view. We look at the family as a resource and when they're a constraint. But that's how I got into it. It was all, and still to this day, my research is very much inspired by my experiences as a family business stakeholder and what I see.
And so if you grew up in a family business, I'm assuming you had the choice to go into the family business as well. And so how did you make that decision, family business versus research?
So yeah, it's a great question. So actually, I was one of our businesses is a law firm, and I was supposed to be a lawyer at first. And I really smart. I did an internship at a law firm, and then I saw my brother go to law school, and it was, they just apply the law. There's really not much creativity. It's not like what it looks like on television. And then, I mean, then our family also has hospitality. At one time we had a hotel, but my grandfather, he died in his sleep in his 50s, very young. And so my father was too young to run and operate it. So they sold it. And going to the hotel school, I absolutely love hotels, but I like staying in them. And in order to really rise up, you've got to be willing to move quite a bit. And particularly at that time, it was places like the Middle East, it was Asia. And I married my high school sweetheart. And so it was I was away from him. I went to a Swiss hotel school. Like I mentioned, I went to school in France. And it was just, I don't know, I fell in love with research. I still am a stakeholder in 3 businesses, as I mentioned, though. So I'm still there. I still dabble. I'm on board to my family businesses. So I've never gotten completely out of it. I'm just not an active role. And I always thought if I didn't get tenure, oh, I would just be an entrepreneur. I was going to start my own, family business probably, or an offshoot of one of our businesses.
Okay. So given your family business background, it seems like when you did come into business research, you didn't start off thinking, oh, I'm going to do family business research. Why is that? Was there even an ecosystem at most universities that talked about family business research?
No, and actually at the time, people were like, if you talk to Joe Astrachan, he was, I think the second editor of Family Business Review. He was told not to. He was a student of Landsberg's at Yale. No, it was, up and coming. Um, a lot of times they were seen as mom and pops to this day. Sometimes they are, unfortunately. So Franz and I got together. First off, it was our experience in family business, but I had an AMJ on work-family conflict. And our first paper, it's a theory paper in entrepreneurship theory and practice on feuding families when conflict does a family business good. And he wrote in his seminar paper for Mike Lubakin a paper on conflict. And Mike Lubakin played matchmaker. And he said, this is good, but Kim Eddleston's doing work in work family conflict and conflict theory. You two should work together. Like, I know you're friends, but take it to the next level. And so that's kind of like how I got pulled in. And then when I got my job at Northeastern, which it was really tough, I'm not gonna lie. When I came out, there was one job in the Boston area. It was entrepreneurship, and it was brutal. Like there was supposed to be a job at Boston College, that line got taken away. There were some smaller schools, but a research school, it was Northeastern, it was entrepreneurship. And I had been involved in the Center for Family Business at the University of Connecticut. And so the person who hired me, Mark Meyer, saw me at Academy Management. He saw that I had some experience in an entrepreneurship center, which was really rare at the time. I actually taught a course that I brought in entrepreneurs. And he convinced me. I was like, oh, I don't know. And he's like, no, you'd be great. And then when I came for my job talk, Ravi Sarathi, I sent it, and I was gonna present my dissertation won 5 awards. It was published in Journal of Applied Psychology, and Ravi Sarathi was excellent. I sent him a preview of my slides, and he's like, "This is really good, but this is OB." He's like, "You need to do entrepreneurship. Can you tell?" And the family business stuff was still such in early stages. I wasn't really able to present it yet. And he's like, take some of your art, your work, because I came out with some pubs, and tell us how you can apply that to entrepreneurship. And so that was my first journal of business venturing. I simplified actually my journal of applied psychology and applied it to women entrepreneurs. And I was able to present what I was going to do and what it was new. And so I was really fortunate because my family's from Rhode Island. As I mentioned, I married my high school sweetheart. Been together since I was 16. He put up with me, and he has his own business, so he can't move. So I was very, very fortunate, but it was I had such stomach problems. I had such stress dealing with it. And then I've been there for 23 years. They've been really, really good to me. Do I have bad days? Yes, but for the most part, I love my colleagues. I work with people in 4 different departments because we kind of have like an OB department. We have an international business and strategy department. We have an entrepreneurship department. And then I also work with someone from marketing, which marketing a lot of times overlaps management too. So I've really enjoyed it.
Okay. And Kim, before I ask you my next question, we have several people here, at least some people here on the participants, who've told me that they've heard at their institutions that, don't do family business research, that flavor of advice. Given how far sort of you and others have contributed to advancing family business research, what would you tell them? Is it a good topic to research or not?
For me, it's made my career. I am one of those people you mentioned, familybusiness.org. I do workshops. I just came back from a workshop in Michigan to family businesses. I do a lot of keynotes to family businesses. So I really enjoy having, probably because I come from family business, impact. I think you have to do research though that, this is a hard field. It's getting harder and harder to publish. I'm sure you can say this, Vishal. I think you have to do something that you're passionate about. And I think it's getting better. I should mention, I'm unfortunately, I was editor at Journal of Business Venturing for 8 years. I'm no longer there. And unfortunately, they did not replace me with another family business person. So there are still some struggles, like ETP is definitely friendlier to family business. We're seeing it more and more, though. JOM and JMS are very friendly. Journal of International Business Studies with Alan Verbecki there. You are seeing it in all the major journals now. Journal of Finance, if you're a finance person, they routinely publish. Same with economics. but I think you've got to be authentic. It's really hard to do research that you're not passionate about and you don't have a sincere interest in. And I think, and also I really enjoy even integrating research into my teaching. So I also teach family business. And I teach a next gen class where I learn so much from them, and then that gets applied to my research. So I try to create a very symbiosis system of, service or work with practice, teaching and research. And like, look, I'm here on my birthday because this is what I like to do. So I think,
Right. And
all that
because you like
saying,
us.
yes, it's like, if you enjoy your job, what's that saying? You'll never work a day in your life. So you've got to do something. Like, of course, we've all had papers that we had a passion for at the beginning and then it dwindles. But, overall, you have to do something that you honestly enjoy. Schools that have entrepreneurship centers, a lot of the donors are entrepreneurs, and most businesses are family businesses. Europe is incredibly pro family business. So, there's definitely pockets. We're seeing it more and more in India, certainly Asia. So, you know, um, there's opportunities too. So a lot of the entrepreneurship journals, as you know, they keep getting more and more respect. They really do. And same with the family business journals too, and the conferences. So there's that to think about.
So you are bullish on the future of family business research.
I definitely am, particularly what accreditation is now putting in America. Accreditation is putting much more emphasis on impact, a lot more. And so, and that's actually hurt. So I should mention, familybusiness.org is a sister website of Entrepreneur Innovation Exchange. It's fully funded by Dick Schultz, the founder of Best Buy. So we're now the #1 website in the world dedicated to family business education and support. But I don't want to lie, we have a huge budget and we have staff. So it's not like just my website. And we also created, we now have contracts or collaborations with all the major entrepreneurship journals, where we do research translations for them, ETP, SCJ, Journal of Business Management, JBV. We also do Family Business Review, Journal of Family Business Strategy. We just started one with, I think it's Academy Management Perspectives. Now we're starting to get journals to reach out to us because we actually have staff who will write the translations for you. And now we have articles with over 3 million views. Like, as an academic, we're lucky if if we get 200 reads and citations, we're like dancing. And it's not uncommon for a really good article on Family Business Review. And we always have the link to the real, article, if you will. That it's not uncommon for them to get 20,000 reads, hundreds of thousands of reads. And now we're having several articles with over 1 million reads, and schools love that. And we send out awards, we send emails to the deans. So, this idea of impact, I think it should hopefully have some influence on what we do research on.
Right. And Kim, you talk about sort of all the staff and all this organization, which is good, but it started with you, one person, right?
Yeah,
And
so
I think as entrepreneurship people, we need to sort of keep that in mind as well, right? That it starts with somebody's passion or interest. But yeah, go ahead.
and maybe that's, I started my first business when I was 9. So you just gotta take the leap. You might get a no or not now. But so my professorship comes from Dick Schultz, again, the founder of Best Buy, and we started Entrepreneur Innovation Exchange, and everything's peer reviewed. And because I was there, people would be like, "Oh, will you do a translation of my work?" People like Alfredo Damascus, some of the key people, and Nadine Camerlander. And we started to get more and more stuff on family business, and like we didn't know where to put it. And so I approached Dick Schultz and I said, we really need something family business, particularly because if you ever go search on family business just on Google, not Google Scholar, just the normal, which that's what a normal family business leader would do, right? They're not going to go to Google Scholar. And you'll see a lot of it is, the magazines, it's written by a journalist. And usually a journalist has the punchline. If you've ever been interviewed by a reporter, they already know the story. They're just filling it in. And it's not peer reviewed. Or it's consultants who are writing something to get business. And so I convinced him and he was like, let's do it. And of course, he's the founder of Best Buy. So he's like, but we have to be the best. He's like, are we the best? Are we the best? And it's like, we got to be the best. And I put together a really good, my board is amazing. And I also put a board with consultants in it too, because they do have a really important voice. I just make sure nothing is ever selling against a nonprofit. We don't have ads. Everything's peer reviewed. But I just saw a space for it. And I remember I'm a full professor now, but it's one of the things that gives me the most joy now when people reach out and, I mean, I feel like I'm making a difference and I'm helping with the family businesses survival. I love giving our researchers too the credit they deserve. It is amazing to see someone's work get 20,000 views, 100,000 views, and with people reading it who will actually put it into place, or at least get them to think. That's our whole mission. We're never trying to give advice, right? There's never one, one formula, but to at least get them to think, should I be doing this? Is this a conversation I need to have? Staying on top of their family and the functioning of the business. So that gives me so much pleasure now and the feeling of impact. And I don't know if it's age or stage, but, and I love seeing it. I love seeing these professors and academics getting the recognition they really, really deserve.
Yeah, and you won awards for it too, so that's wonderful. Now,
I'm a middle child, so there's always jokes about the middle child being, overlooked. So I'm one of those people who needs, I'm like a teenager. I need lots of validation, lots of good job, Kim. Good job, Kim.
so can you tell us a little bit about problems and opportunities you see with family research, family business research going forward?
Yeah, so and like in any area, there's always a few. So when family business research started, it was strategy researchers. And still a lot of the bulk, particularly in America, tend to come from strategy. So it's definitely sometimes a negative slant. They often apply agency theory. This is also this slant sometimes of comparing family and non-family firms, and again, a negative view. We're starting to see that change a little bit, because when you start to really look at it and look at family businesses, they're some of the oldest businesses in the world. And about 33% of all publicly held companies in America, the Fortune 1000, are under family control, incredibly successful. When you go outside of America, that percentage is even higher. Even like when we've collected data in India and tried to get non-family businesses, we couldn't even. Privately held, they were all family businesses. So I think, there's definitely more interest in heterogeneity. How do we help them? How is the family a resource? Understanding, like, how have family businesses, like looking at the Mittelstand in Germany, how have they stayed innovative for decades, generations? How have they thrived this long? Even this idea we're seeing like Ford, where they've had a family CEO, then they've had a non-family CEO, like even interest in that, the role of the family on the board in publicly held companies. So we're definitely seeing more diverse perspectives, which I think are very important. You're starting to see it in even a little bit more in other journals too. You have some like leading economists, Morton Bennetson, for example, leading finance people publishing, which give a whole new view, even marketing on branding and so forth. We definitely need more, though, when you said opportunities, looking at the family side. So there was definitely this shift, and I think we've seen it in a few fields for the big data. The secondary huge data sets everyone's using, and using proxies, which, I've done it too. I have research like that, but, they try and use it proxies for family involvement or social emotional well. And I think we need to go back to surveys and, qualitative, or personally, I really like multi-method too. But I do think we need to go back to actually collecting data, validated scales, really getting information, getting in there, what is the board on the family business doing? The family on the top management team, how do they work? What's happening and so forth. So I think there's a lot of opportunity looking more at the family. There's also a lot of opportunity looking at different types, like family office is a very hot topic right now, but they're incredibly secretive. So we need more information on family offices. We're also seeing not as much in the States, but particularly abroad, these family business groups where it's like the family has, it's like a pyramid. They have this one business or a group, the name, and they'll have multiple businesses underneath that they run and operate. And they're creating these dynasties. And we have very, very little information on this. And I have so many students who come from, for example, India, who come from these family business groups. And it's so interesting the way they keep being entrepreneurial. They share resources, contacts, suppliers, and it creates this incredible, innovation, wealth. Then the cross-cultural, we need so much more. So I mentioned India, but Asia, where entrepreneurship is new. So, when we look at Europe, they're like in fifth generation. America's younger, but then we have a bunch of these countries where entrepreneurship is a new thing. And so, and they're in such a different place. I think that the one child policy in China is going to be incredibly interesting. Like, this is something I would love to study if someone has data, because I've had so many students who, because of the one child policy, we're going to see a bunch of women taking over these businesses. And it's going to be incredibly interesting to see, what occurs and how even that ends up influencing the family's involvement in the business and how they keep it a family business and keep that familyness alive. So I think there's so much opportunity. And particularly, remember, if you're an entrepreneurship scholar, it's you've got to at least think of it, because the vast majority of businesses around the world, they actually are under family control. So it's like it adds a little dynamic. And if you love drama, if you love a good television show, Yellowstone, Succession, almost the family's there. It's so interesting to kind of bring in the drama and the personality of the family. It's like a soap opera with all those elements of the business. It's really fun and interesting.
That's wonderful. And we do have questions from the audience, but we'll get to those in a few minutes, Kim. But
Sure.
you talked about, all these exciting opportunities in family business research. As a reviewer, and I'm assuming you review tons of family business papers every year, and as somebody who's been on, who served as an editor, what do you look for in a paper?
That's a really good question. And now I do more special issues. So like right now I'm working on the intro to an SEJ. And it's hard. So the first thing I look for, and this is from definitely Mike Lubakin, is so what? Like, am I bored? And I have a really short attention span. So it has to capture my attention. Reviewers, we're taking time out of our day. We don't get paid, as a reviewer or an editor, we don't get paid for it. So you better get my attention really quick. And there's got to be something in it for me. I'm learning something like, oh, I need this published, like your work. I need this published. I'm going to cite it. I'm going to cite it in my own work. But you've got to grab attention. There's got to be a contribution to a theory or a framework, a concept. There's got to be something, sexy. There's got to be something that I wasn't expecting, a twist, a turn. It makes me rethink previous research. It changes the way I'm going to do research in the future. Something to, oh, I didn't think of that. The best is when you read something and you're like, darn, I wish I thought of that. This is brilliant. And you see the paper as honestly making, a contribution to the field. And of course, those are hard. They're hard to write. And you're looking also, it's unfortunate, but in today's day and age, you really have to trust too. Like, I mean, I know more and more journals are doing things with data, but you also have to trust that the person knows their stuff. So, the literature review, the data looks solid. I am not one of these fans of the gymnastics with the data. I think that's going overboard. Our field has gone so much to the data and the runs, and that's not something I want to have trust in the data. I want what needs to be done. I'm not one of these who forces the gymnastics in statistics. I'm not sure what we're getting out of that. Unfortunately, I hope the pendulum swings a little bit more. Maybe with us having to like submit data, it'll go back to that. One of the people I work with is from economics, and I always tease her. I'm like, are you going to run, as many models as you can until we don't support our hypotheses anymore? Because eventually you will no longer have support for your hypotheses. But, that's economics, I guess, does a lot of these gymnastics. But I'm always looking at that so what, and then you definitely need more trust now. There's this issue of, things plagiarism. I'm not as big as about the self, like, I mean, you and I both do stuff on women entrepreneurship. There's only so many ways you can describe role congruity theory. So I don't get concerned with, so much of self plagiarism is, if it's a little theory sections and so forth, but there are concerns now about things being authentic that we never had to worry about before, unfortunately. So you're looking for a really good lit review. I always joke about everyone's been invited to the party. Like, you've got to know who the key players are in the field and make sure you cite them because they might be a reviewer. And I know Franz, oh my gosh, if someone writes on stewardship theory and family business and they didn't cite us, it's like an automatic rejection. So, you always got to make sure too, where you're submitting it. So, make sure they've had articles on it. Or in family business, sometimes what we can do in our cover letter is say, you haven't published something on family business here yet, but this adds to your conversation on these papers. Like, this really challenges or changes the way, work family conflict is talked about. And so you've got to kind of know the journal too you're submitting it all to and consider that.
So Kim, you talked about all these countries where you see so many family businesses, right? And you said, you would love to see you see that there's a lot of family businesses in this country or that country. But then when you look at the journals, most of the research is not coming from those countries. Is that a supply side problem or a demand side problem?
Oh, that's a really good comment. That's a really good comment. I know most of the research is still, we're seeing a little bit more from Asia, which I think is good. I don't know if it's because of their training and what interests them. And, remember, in some of these countries, entrepreneurship really is a brand new thing. Capitalism is new, so private business ownership. I don't know if they have the departments or the schools or the training and so forth. It's definitely dominated by, North America, Europe for sure. We are starting to see more, particularly from China though, which is interesting. Australia is starting to have a nice contingent of family business researchers also.
Okay. And before we go to the audience question, one more question I have for you. Can you tell us about one family business research paper that you are working on these days? How did you get the idea? How did you put together the team? How are you thinking about submitting it? What kind of response are you getting from people when you talk about that paper?
So I have ones in different state. I'm always juggling, but one that we're just really in the throes of it now. It's multi-method, and the idea came for it when I was working on a paper in entrepreneurship theory and practice on tax evasion in family businesses with India. We got qualitative research and survey data. And in the qualitative research, a lot of the people were talking about bribes. And they really had a positive view of them, which was really interesting. They saw them as an ensured stuff would get done. So they saw it as really greasing the wheels. So, oh no, but when I pay a bribe, like I get the license the next day, or the electricity's turned on. So I have this assurance that whatever the government official needs to do actually gets done. And they saw it as just part of the system. Everybody does it. And so I actually, for this new paper, Jay Mulkey's on it because he's the one who's able to he's Indian. He goes back and can get the qualitative data on very sensitive topics like bribery. People trust him. And then Ellie Bonalivia, we have a JMS with Alan Verbecki on bribery and how the more you pay bribes, it was really a sense-making perspective, how you see the environment as filled with more obstacles, if you will. So this one, what we're doing is, so we have the qualitative, actually he sent me yesterday a bunch of quotes to use because it started really there. And what we found, which I thought was really interesting, was a lot of these family businesses would hide their wealth as a strategy. So sometimes it was to lessen the bribes, but also, to lessen like the amount they were asked for and just not to bring more attention to them from government officials. So all different strategies they used on just, not buying new cars, living in houses below their means, buying like property or other business and putting it in their children's name so no one knew it was theirs. And so this study, it's probably going to start with the qualitative side because we have some amazing quotes. And then I think our big finding is this strategy of dealing with corruption, of hiding wealth. And our DV is actually innovation because bribery ends up impacting negatively the amount they invest in innovation. And we find that those that are able to hide the money, hide their wealth, that money is more likely to be put towards innovation. So, and then we did collect survey data because I am one of those people, I don't know, my training, I'm like, okay, this is super interesting, but show me the statistics. Like, is this, is it superfluous? Is this just I'm just looking for what I want in the qualitative data, or is it actually a pattern? And so we actually have the survey data is cross-sectional. I don't know why we would need longitudinal, to be honest. I think it's okay, particularly with the qualitative, the multi-method. It's more to show that there are actual patterns there. And we had to kind of create this measure of hiding wealth and so forth. But so we're putting that together now. I think it's going to be really fun and interesting. I have to see how it comes out. I would like it if I can make enough of a theory, and I'm still not sure what theory to use. So if you have ideas, let me know. I'm always the writer. I tend to write. I'm thinking maybe JMS because our bribery papers there and did very well, or JOM. There is the issue of we have to get a reviewer who likes it, thinks it's sexy and new. If someone's going to say, oh, the survey data is not longitudinal, which given the sensitivity of the topic, there honestly is no way we could have gotten longitudinal. I mean, there's questions in there about bribery. There's questions in there about hiding wealth, to not be targeted. Like, the whole reason people fill these out is it's anonymous. Jay Mulkey sits there with the business owners, feeling leaders, and has them fill it out, answers questions, promises them it's anonymous. So I'm hoping the sexiness of it will maybe, otherwise, I mean, ETPI has become one of my favorite journals. It's the one I enjoy reading. I think they take chances on papers more. They'll publish a paper that's not perfect in terms of methods, but it's sexy. And so that would be a good match also.
And I think your emphasis on survey research will come as very welcome to many of the participants on this session, because we've talked about the challenges of survey research, and you've sort of emphasized how survey research is such a big part of sort of what you like to do. So
are you still doing it? Because you've done it. You have lots of papers with survey.
in the past.
You're not doing it anymore? So what are you using? Secondary?
Archival.
Archive, okay.
Yeah. So with that, let's move to the audience for some questions. Lila, do you want to start with your question?
Yes, hello, good evening or good morning. It's a good evening. It's evening here. Professor Eddleston, I just have a small question for you. Since you spearheaded and championed the field of family business, do you have any specific advice for someone who's researching a kind of relatively new area? How can we get that published? For example, I'm currently working on my PhD in the field of organizational anthropomorphism, where there is hardly any research at
What is
all. I
it?
think
I don't even know what it is. Can you describe it super fast?
anthropomorphism is basically when humans have the tendency to humanize what is non-human. We see human aspects in anything that is human. So sometimes employees have an emotional connection to their organization because they see some human aspects in their organization. So as I told you, there is hardly any research on it. There's like, I think 2 or 3 papers in total. So how can I get that published, basically, is my
So
question.
you just kind of answered your own question because when you described it to me, you described it in terms of things like organizational attachment,
Yes.
organizational commitment. So I think I would write it in a way that you always want to speak to the audience that you think will find it the most interesting
Mm-hmm.
and add it as a new perspective, a new way of looking at something. I think that might be a way to do it. And then opening up the field that way, I mean, but people people like new, but they also like familiar. So if
Yes.
you can kind of put it there and give, I know I always, as a reviewer and editor, we see so much of the same. So when you see something that's taking something especially if it's something like psychological attachment, organizational commitment, organizational identity, there's lots and lots of work on that. So if I see that, and like I love organizational identity, if I see a new approach to it, a new way of thinking about it, I find that interesting. It's like, I've never seen this. This is cool. I want to learn
Okay.
more. So that would be
Okay.
my advice.
Okay, that's great. Thank you so much.
And
Thank
Lila,
you.
can
Thank
you
you.
tell Dr. Eddleston where you're doing your PhD? Which country?
I'm in Egypt. My institution is the German University in Cairo.
Oh,
Perfect.
wonderful. Always wanted to
Yes.
go.
Well, you're welcome at any time.
Oh.
Thank you
Thank
so
you.
much. Thank you.
Thank you. Indukuri, you have a question?
Yes, Professor Kim. I'm working for Geetham University, India. We have an MOU with Northeastern University, Boston. We are closely working with Greg.
What's your
Greg?
question? Indukuri, what's your question?
No. We have a tie-up with Northeastern University, Boston, under the VDC, Venture Development Center. We are closely working with Greg Collar. Greg.
Excellent. Excellent. Small world.
Perfect.
And we have introduced a family business management course in BBA program in 2015. Since 2015, I've been teaching family business management. So that's
Wonderful.
Perfect. Indukuri,
So
do you
there's
have
a
a
lot
question
of
there?
nice meeting you. I'm interested to do research on family business and succession planning and all continuous spirit of entrepreneurship.
wonderful. Actually, we could totally use more research out of India. You know what I mean? And that's
Yes.
actually at familybusiness.org. That's one of our where our audience is growing the most. But there's
Okay,
lots
I'm
of really
interested
cool
to collaborate with
exercises
you.
too.
I'm interested to collaborate with you. Even
Thank you.
even my daughter wants to do research in the family business area.
Thank you, Indu. We'll move to the next question because we have a line of people waiting to ask questions. But thank you. Mariam, do you want to go ahead and ask?
Yes, hello. Hello, professors. So my name is Mariam. I'm currently doing PhD in UK, but my main study will be family business in Oman. And I noticed that in Oman, family businesses maybe, or I see it, they have certain attributes that I could not find in the, let's say, Western focused or Asian focused studies, or this is what I noticed practically. But my main worry right now is access, like how I get access to them because they are so secretive sometimes. So do you have any advice or tips on how I can contact these family businesses so I can do my research with them?
So if there's a center for family business, that's always the very best bet. So a lot of people who are collecting data in family business go through their center. Another thing is even if you can start using your personal contacts, I don't know if you're interviewing or surveying, once you contact one, ask them if they can recommend someone else. And it is really, really important that you emphasize everything's anonymous. We're just looking to triangulate. We're looking for patterns. We're not looking to identify anyone, especially if anything is sensitive. But I would either do a center or again use your personal connect networks. It's called snowball sampling. That's what we used to call it in the
Yeah.
olden days.
Yeah, I was thinking about it, but the first one is that my main worry is the first one to get.
So I would ask all your classmates and professors, just get that first one, and then hopefully snowball sampling. And hopefully you don't need a lot. I hope you're not doing survey data because survey
No,
data you
no,
usually
I'm
need at
doing
least
case
200. Oh, it's so
studies.
qualitative. Okay.
Yeah.
And Kim,
And
how do you
do you have any advice on how to deal with families is there, like, for example, we have elite interviewing for those insensitive position. Did you, throughout your experience, do you find like interviewing family business should like we should behave in a certain way, or it's just go about it like normal
That's a
interviews?
really good question. You need to respect the family. So, really, really important. Families want to know they're a resource. They want to know that you accept family business. You're not critical of family business. You don't think the family should be replaced. So, very, very much, if you have any background in family business, like that's how I always build legitimacy and they're looking for legitimacy. So either you have some kind of experience with them, you honor them, and you start with that nice dialogue on, you're the backbone of the economy, so important. The purpose of my research is to better understand, hopefully help, and whatever it is. But it is actually really, really important to build that positive rapport with them. That was a good question.
Okay, thank you so much.
And Kim, how do you deal with this issue that if the surveys are anonymous, you're not going to be able to do longitudinal research? Is that an issue in family business research or not?
So I'm doing more and more with secondary data also, and some countries are much better at collecting it. So the tax evasion paper was also multi-method with survey, but I think we had a lot of it's the editor. We had a really good editor, Don Newbaum. And if it's a really sexy topic, it's not an issue. I know someone who actually has a second round AMJ right now, and it's multi-method. And the data is, I don't want to say too much, she has an R&R, but they did not have a problem with it being survey because it was multi-method and the topic is so sensitive. So I do think, it has to make sense. Like, what would longitudinal add? Like, if it's not going to add value, like even my early research on gender, it's like sex predicts gender identity. It's like, do you need longitudinal? Like that's kind of, although nowadays things are a little different, but it was kind of like, do we need longitudinal data for this? So I think, I think it depends where you're going and if it makes sense or not. If it's something that honestly needs to be longitudinal, you're going to have a hard time. Another thing is, for example, I have survey data where we have multiple respondent. So what we're looking at is one point in time, but what's sexy about it is we have the family leader and multiple family employees and that triangulation. And then we also got qualitative. But, some editors and reviewers are, unfortunately bullheaded, but you're going to get that no matter what. Because there's also people who are biased against secondary data and the archival data.
Yeah.
So it's always kind of finding, the right match.
Right.
It's a bit of luck, isn't it? It's a bit of luck getting
Yeah,
the right editor and reviewer.
You run into the right editor, reviewer, and of course. So Sanjeev, you have a question?
Yep. Professor, my question is for you. I'm from India and I'm a research scholar. Now, one of the interesting articles that I've come across talks about, when it comes to resolving family conflicts, communication and consensus are at the center of resolving family conflicts. So while communication helps build the self-esteem of the second generation, the third generation, consensus, on the other hand, can lead to a more passive behavior. Now, my question is, these small nuances, if one really wants to understand in details, one really needs to do the interviews, depth interviews, maybe ethnographic studies with the top management teams. Finding access and doing these kind of interviews could be really challenging. So how does one overcome or circumvent those problems in finding access to these family top management teams?
So your question is also about getting access?
Yep.
Yeah,
Getting
I know
access
it's-
and, just to uncover those nuances which are really going on in the family when it comes to resolving the family conflicts. So whether the family is high on communication, whether consensus is lacking, and what are the harmful effects of consensus, of seeking consensus, and things like that. To understand those nuances, I think Depth interviews are very important and very crucial, but getting that access to the senior team members, especially when it comes to the head of the family and maybe the second generation altogether, can be really challenging. How does one overcome those kind of challenges?
Yeah, as I mentioned, if you have a center for family business or an organization you could work with that, is involved with family businesses so that there's something in it for them. One of the workshop I gave Tuesday was on intergenerational communication and conflict. So even if you had an event where, you spoke to them and offered them advice on communication, on conflict, got them all in that room together, and then could get them to do, interviews or something like this. But I would almost say also if you can get one or two and then use that snowball to talk to someone else and so forth. And that actually, what you're studying sounds like a very good one for qualitative and multi-method. Because again, I would almost want to see the scale too on how they come up, or even an experiment would be fun. But again, you got to get the people to talk to you. And that's been difficult. A lot of times when I collect my own data, which I don't do that more anymore because I'm an old lady, I rely on, assistant professors. It would take us 5 years. So whenever Franz and I collected data, it did take us 5 years. I was never able to collect. So right now I'm still helping someone with open innovation in family business data, and it's taken us 5 years. Oh, I teach next gens too. So if you have a family business course, reach out to them, give them extra credit, or have them do a homework assignment. I've gotten some qualitative through students that spent like access, and it's been, excellent. And there's been a couple of times where I've had something very sensitive, and I've had the students help me in even asking the right questions. So if you teach a family business course, there you go. There's some of your resources.
Perfect. Thank you, Kim. And so what I've understood so far from the Q&A is access is a critical issue in family business research.
It is. There is some secondary data though. There really is that, you could start something and just make sure, that's always an issue. And I see really papers with good ideas get rejected because the front end, what they're trying to do, doesn't match what they can actually do with the data. So you always got to know, the archival data, you're usually getting a lot. Europe collects a lot of really neat data, much more than America. The different governments do. And so there's some really neat access there, but always just make sure it matches, what you can do.
Wonderful. Kutsia, you have a question?
Okay. Yes. Hi. Happy birthday.
Thank you.
And so my question is regarding the survey questionnaires because I couldn't find anyone like to guide me on this mostly. I'm doing my research on women digital entrepreneurs in Pakistan. So it is quite a niche section in Pakistan, especially. So collection of data is what is really troubling for me. People are not ready to fill out the survey. I have tried everything in the book that I have done it. Okay, now how do you do it? How did you do it? Because I'm not working in a university, so I don't have a students to give extra credit. So I just hire. Yeah, I have to hire surveyors. So now you
So
told,
some people pay for data too, like
I'm doing just that.
Qualtrics.
I'm doing just that. So yeah, it is very expensive for me. But still, I wanted to ask you that what new methods of sample size calculation are you using? Like there is G power and there is Morgan table and one or more things. What have you used in calculating the size of your sample?
So you mean the power you need? What size?
No,
So
sample size.
so
How you
I
decide
always
sample size?
I always learned the magic number is 200. That was always like you wanted to get as close to 200 as possible. That was always kind of when I do stuff with multi-respondent though, if you have multi-respondents that, obviously the more, reviewers and editors aren't stupid. So the more you're getting really unique people, really unique information, it can come down a little bit, obviously. But the magic number I always learned was 200. That was enough to have your controls in. It was strong enough to find mediation, strong enough to find moderation. So getting as close to 200 as possible. That was I don't know, Vishal, if you knew something different. That was what we were taught.
Tim, that's what
Okay,
I was
so
taught,
that is
200.
actually very interesting thing because when you have a population greater than say 100,000, so these calculators show 384, above 300 respondents, that sample size. Now you're telling me that 200 is enough. My
Well,
supervisor tells me that for PhD thesis, you must have above 300. So I'm confused.
Always do what your supervisor says until you get the PhD.
Yeah,
Correct, Kim?
that's the thumb rule. Yeah, that's the thumb
either
rule.
do, or there's a power analysis you can do. So, if
Okay.
I was a dissertation advisor and I said 200 and then a student came back and said, but the power analysis says XYZ, I would be like, oh, okay, let's go with it. That's what the power analysis says. So if you can show what the power analysis says with, the complexity of your model, it's just hard. It's hard collecting data. I'm not gonna
So
lie. Like I told you, it takes
especially,
me 5 years usually.
yeah, but I'm short on time because I have to finish my PhD in time. It's just that
Kutsia,
I,
can we move on to the next question?
okay,
Because,
okay. I got the main answer. Thank
Yeah.
you.
Perfect. Mayuk, you have a question?
Yes, Professor. Thanks for the and happy birthday, Professor Kim. So my question is short. The question is how to proceed with a conceptual or theory development paper in the family business area. To be specific is like we see a lot of sibling rivalry or parent-child tension of ideology, like father-son in the family business. So there is a concept of forgiveness. So if there is something called a partial forgiveness, so if you want to study the impact of partial forgiveness in family business performance, so in that context, how we should go forward to develop a conceptual paper or a theory development paper in
So the one thing with theory, of course, is there's not as many outlets. But there's definitely not enough research on sibling rivalry. I will tell you that in family business. Anything with relationships is difficult. Forgiveness, that's a really good topic for family business and one where I could see there being a really nice conceptual paper. So just know though, like obviously you would want to target AMR and know that that's a broad journal. So your theory would probably have to make contributions beyond family business, like what could other, firms learn from that and so forth. But, I have a few published in ETP. Family Business Review also is, ETP is a Financial Times hit. And then, Family Business Review, I don't get credit for it, but a lot of my co-authors do. So, they also, and then Journal of Family Business Strategy keeps going up in prominence. And I know some of my co-authors in Europe will get credit for that one too. So you always have to think about their outlets and so forth. But I think that's a really neat topic and it makes sense. Like that would be a very difficult topic also to get data on. And I think that always kind of raises the bar a little bit in gives it more interest because as a reviewer, you're reading it and you're like, oh, this is so neat. And this would be so difficult to test. So I think that's good. But those are really hot topics. That's really unique. Good luck with that.
And Kim, that was my sentiment too. Forgiveness in sibling rivalry or parental offspring seems like a really sexy topic. Now show me the paper, right?
Yeah.
Shikha, you are next.
Hi, Kim. It's always a pleasure to hear you. And I think,
Am I audible?
Yeah,
Oh, that's
yeah.
better.
Fantastic. It's always a pleasure hearing you. And I think from India, where family business is an upcoming area, listening to you just gets in the energy right. I have two questions. One, when you talk about qualitative data, do you think while studying business families, the number of respondents could be around, what would be the appropriate respondents? And two, do you think doctoral scholars or early research, early researchers in this area can volunteer or be somehow related to the familybusiness.org? It will be a nice learning experience.
Okay, so the numbers, are you talking qualitative? Because quantitative, we kind of
Qualitative, she said.
qualitative. Okay, I'm sorry, I missed that. So you know, it depends how deep you're going, and again, how unique. I know that what I've been told was usually, unless it's an incredibly unique sample you're going after, very, hard, difficult, at least 15, you're seeing, you want it where they say it's saturated. You're not getting any new information anymore. So, personally, I kind of definitely double digits, even into the 20s. Beyond that, a lot of times, in my experience, that was kind of enough. I'd rather have a longer, really in-depth interview. But you always have to look at, and never hurts to look at, if you're targeting a journal, what's the norm? What's the norm and so forth. I do get nervous with less than 10, though, as a reviewer, I get nervous with less than 10 unless it's an incredibly unique type of people. They're like, wow, the fact that they got 8 is amazing. So I would say in the teens and so forth. And then the other question was familybusiness.org, anyone, we're peer reviewed, so anyone can submit something. We're always happy. And same with Entrepreneur Innovation Exchange. That's the entrepreneurship website. So a research translation or something very interesting, like the gentleman who just spoke, sibling rivalry. Actually, I have one article there on it, and it's one of our top read because there's not much on it. But you can always write something too that's maybe based a little bit more on research or an overview and giving a bit of advice. And they're short. They're very short because they're written for practitioners. So if anyone wants to reach out, feel free. It'd be wonderful for you to maybe get some articles. And certainly when you do have a published article, we have a template and we have ghostwriters, and get your research translated.
Wonderful. Kim, I know we told you 1 hour and we are already past that. Are you willing to take a few more questions? Or? Okay.
If people have time, I would love to. It's fine.
Amisha, you're next. You're not
Oops, you're
audible,
muted.
Amisha. You're not audible. How about we come back to you, Amisha? Hira, you want to go ahead with your question?
Hi there. I hope I'm audible.
Yes.
All right. All right. Hi, Professor Kim. First of all, let me just take out some time to appreciate how you kept us hooked for a whole hour. Your speaking style is really, really fantastic, I must say. All right. So my question is that my core area of research is open innovation hubs and how for like business incubation centers and co-working spaces. So recently, I've been researching a lot around and about this topic. So I wanted to actually do a research on how family businesses, when falling apart or maybe are contribute are going towards their loss, how they can come about and seek help from open innovation hubs, like getting some incubation done and things like so on and so forth. So I made a paper, submitted an abstract to a conference where I received the the their claim was that research looks weak and needs to get a bit stronger. So I needed to ask from you what aspects can we include in my research to make it a bit accepted. Yes.
So it was the theory. They wanted more theoretical contribution or deeper understanding on the topic.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah, so you know, you need to find yourself a theory or a framework. So you're hoping to send it to like an entrepreneurship journal?
Yeah, I sent it to a conference, and then I wanted to take from that conference towards their journals like JBV or ATP. But then again, I realized that they would not be accepting unless and until my research has been to some good conference. So I tried, but then again, seeing the abstract, the conference people were of the statement that research looks a bit weak. So I wanted to
Oh,
know how can I strengthen my research?
so yeah, I would get a friendly review from either a colleague or a professor. It sounds like you probably need to go a little bit deeper in the open innovation literature, what we know, what we don't know, a theory, how you're making a theoretical contribution to the area. Sometimes it's selling it. Like that intro is so important. Um, thing is, people make up their mind on a paper, you know, on by the second page. So if your intro isn't doing a good job selling what the gap is in the literature and what the contribution is, sometimes you know they've already rejected you before they even read the paper. So I always write my intros
I
last.
agree.
And you know, intros can take me 2 weeks to write a good intro. So really make sure you're articulating why it's an important topic, what we know, the gap, and how your paper is going to fill that gap, that contribution that you're making. Oh, look
Perfect.
Right.
here.
Thank you.
Yeah,
Amisha,
Vishal gave you something really good. I'm looking at the comment. Excellent comment.
Amisha, are you ready to ask now?
Thank you.
Okay, I think we lost Amisha. Sylvia, do you want to ask your question?
Yes. Good evening. On my side, it's evening. I have two concerns. One of it is that in my country, the literature says that over 90% of SMEs are family businesses. But then when you go into conducting a survey, you realize that we do not have a sampling frame for family businesses, and we do not also have a center for family business. So in that case, it means that you have a bigger population of SMEs and you have a subpopulation of family businesses embedded. How best then can I do the sampling for family businesses? Then two, in situations where you're studying family business resources and how it interacts with the entrepreneurial orientation of maybe the family CEO, family business CEO to influence family business resilience, and you get into the organization and you're not able to meet the family CEO, who next do you recommend as a respondent to pick that more good data? Thank you.
So you're running into the same issue we did in India. So I would say just go to an entrepreneurship center. Chances are, like you mentioned, anyone you interview or survey there is going to be a family business. And in contexts like this, though, it's really important you get at heterogeneity. So you're getting at things like the percentage of family ownership, family involvement, you know, how many family members are in management, you know, what generation are you in? And I do like now, I tend to use it quite a bit, is do they identify themselves as a family business? Really important. In India, actually, in the study I have now that I talked about and the tax evasion article, we also, which I thought was really interesting, we collected a measure on family firm identity and we did find heterogeneity. So even though they were defined, all of them, they defined themselves as a family business, there was diversity in how attached they were to that idea that, you know, I am a family business. I am going to pass this on to the next gen. The decisions I make are, they're framed from that. So we did find differences there. So I would say use your entrepreneurship centers. And then I already forgot the second question. What was the second question? I have a blonde or a gray moment. I don't know.
Okay, the second question is that when it comes to collecting data, you get
I
into
remember.
the family.
So yeah,
Hello?
if I know if you can't get the family CEO, the next would probably be someone I would prefer someone actively involved versus just you don't want a passive owner unless it's an ownership paper. So you would want someone in top management, usually, a family business leader, we would call it. So a next in line or a next gen. It might be really, I don't know your study, but it might be really interesting to take your model and put it from the next gen's perspective. And you might even have more possible people you could interview. I hope that helps.
Amisha sent me her question by message. She said her mic is not working. Her question is, what kind of language or approach should one use when asking sensitive questions to family businesses so that they don't provide sort of socially desirable answers or neutral answers?
Yeah, and that's actually why the data we collected in India, and that's why he's one of my best friends, Jay Mulkey. He's an older gentleman, very respected there. And he goes and sits and talk and listens. So if someone wants to have a short conversation, that's fine. But some of them, he would also just listen to their issues, try and give a little bit of business advice if possible. And it was very, very conversational. But I think the first thing is always building some kind of legitimacy with the person you're talking to. Sometimes you do have to, it's a little bit different. You do have to give away why you're collecting data. I know sometimes, you don't want to give it away, but like in our situation where we did two totally different data collections for the tax evasion and now the bribery. And, it was like, we said we're trying to understand how you deal with obstacles in your environment. How, we know it's an issue. We feel for you. Like, look at this. I remember when he collected research on tax evasion, there was just an article in the economics. And he talked about that to just kind of create rapport and show he understood. And obviously, when you're collecting things like that, nothing can be judgmental. So if I'm collecting things on, for example, family relationships, I'll share that I come from a family business. I come from 9. I've seen it all. I've seen the good, the bad, the ugly. I'm not going to judge you. So you have to be kind. You have to be really kind and show grace, show understanding, and let them know that you're trying to better understand this. And then we always say we'll share the research. We will share the research for you. One thing when we did the bribery, though, it was kind of sad because so many of the people he interviewed would be like, and what are you going to do about it? Like, how are you going to help? And it's like, oh, it's like, you can't change India. It's like people were hoping that our research would actually have impact on policy, if you will. So that's a tough one.
Yeah, and some of these things, it's hard to impact policy, right? Because especially for researchers. But Kim, I know we are at 75 minutes. We really need to sort of bring this to a close. So I'll ask you the last question, which is, what would your advice be for aspiring entrepreneurship/family business researchers how would you suggest they build their career or their research portfolio?
Yeah, it's a good question. Always, do something that you're passionate about. Try to really answer that so what question. Why does it matter? Why is it changing the field? How is it changing the conversation? How is it contributing? Research, it is baby steps. I know sometimes when we're collecting data in our dissertations, we're trying to, do so much. Like really think about that contribution and so forth. Always work with great colleagues and people who challenge you. If you get an R&R that you honestly can't handle, ask a senior member to join it. You know what I mean? I know a lot of us at our age now, we get asked to come on to R&Rs. Like, don't ever be afraid asking for help. Be a good collaborator too. You know what I mean? If you have to learn a new method, you learn it. Never say, oh, I'm only third author and I've done enough work. People will, they'll never work with you again. And one other just piece of advice, because I've heard, if you don't mind, because I think this is the worst advice you can give a junior. you need to send it to the journal where you honestly have the best shot. So you might want to go one step higher, but this idea of sending everything to AMJ and AMR is such bad advice, and I'll tell you why. Being an editor at JBV for 8 years, and every year I have at least one specialist. So SEJ, now I'm on a JMS. They have a spreadsheet about you. And so they know every time you've submitted something and it's gotten rejected and you've wasted reviewers' time. So, you want to go one step higher because you never know. You might get lucky. But, really think about, like I told you, the paper I'm working on right now, like that is not AMJ. I still love it and I have a passion for it. We're going to, if I can, and it has enough of a real contribution, to management, I'll send it to JMS or JOM, which I really like those journals, but otherwise it'll be an entrepreneurship journal. I'm not sending it most likely to AMJ. I just don't, it doesn't have a shot, and I don't want to embarrass myself and be in that database and I see people doing this all the time. So your reputation is everything. So really, really guard it and take care of it and keep your, people respecting you.
And Kim, I fully agree with you on that. That's the advice we give here too, which is not every paper is going to AMJ, and you shouldn't waste your time and their time submitting it. And that's something your senior scholars or mentors can sort of help you guide through the process. So on that note, Kim, thank you very much for your time. You've been amazing. You've gone way above time. We know today is your birthday. You might have other much important and nicer things to do.
I spent it with you, Vishal. I'm a huge fan of his, by the way. Absolute huge fan. I love his research.
Thank you for the shout out, Kim. Take care. Have a good day, Kim.
Thank you. Bye, everybody. Good luck.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.